The year was 1795 when William Wordsworth met someone whose friendship changed his life forever. The name of that person was Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Wordsworth and Coleridge went on to write a volume of poetry which they called Lyrical Ballads, a book that marked the beginning of what was later known as British Romanticism. Before this new joint venture, Wordsworth had experienced an adventurous life. He was born in the Lake District in 1770 to a middle-class family. After an unsuccessful academic education, he went to France, which had just gone through a revolution. While at first a revolutionary enthusiast himself, the post-revolution events left him rather confused and disenchanted. He later left France and returned to England, where he met Coleridge and started contributing to Lyrical Ballads. Lyrical Ballads in itself is an oxymoron, meaning the two terms lyrics and ballads describe opposing styles of poetry. While a lyric's focus is emotions and feelings, a ballad describes action. The two poets decided to write ballads, but in such a way that emotions and feelings took center stage. Wordsworth's mission in Lyrical Ballads was to write poems that search for the extraordinary and supernatural in ordinary events of existence. This feature of the extraordinary in the ordinary can be seen throughout Wordsworth's poetry. For example, Anecdote for Fathers describes a father asking a simple question of his child and in return learning an extraordinary lesson. In this poem, the father asks the son if he prefers where they live now or the place where they lived prior to this one. The son is reluctant to answer but tells him that he prefers their previous home. When the father is persistent as to why he picked their previous abode, the son generates a very silly response, as if uninterested. In fact, the boy lies. In return, the father learns not to ask silly questions and be happy as things are. Another important characteristic of Wordsworth's poetry is its deep connection with nature. In his poems, life and death are just processes in nature. In some of his poems that are famous as Lucy poems, he describes a girl who is not seen or appreciated by anyone, but the poet feels her, and these poems end in Lucy's death. These pieces are about accepting mortality. In one poem, Lucy finally becomes part of nature by being absorbed into the river. In another very well-known poem, Tintern Abbey, Wordsworth addresses the theme of repetition and remembrance. He talks about how one can change and remain the same, how one goes through loss of innocence and separation from true self, but gains more wisdom to appreciate what he called the still sad music of humanity. And in another similar poem, Ode Intimations of Immortality, he again talks about the loss of childhood glory, but admits a newborn glory one gains through their adult perspective. Although Wordsworth cannot be categorized as religious or Christian, in his poetry he believes in a greater force or a sense of the sublime. He speaks of experiences that go beyond the limits of human understanding, a power far greater than us. A good example of that is in Book 13 of the Prelude. Here, Wordsworth recalls the memory of the time when he was climbing Mount Snowdon, where he experienced an epiphany or revelation. Wordsworth died at the age of 80, and his autobiographical epic poem, The Prelude, was published after his death. His legacy continued on with authors and thinkers such as John Ruskin, Matthew Arnold, and George Eliot being his greatest admirers.